Dzień dobry, witamy wszystkich, witam wszystkich Państwa, którzy zasiedli dzisiaj razem w naszym Windovators klubie. Zaczęliśmy dość nietypowo, zawsze zaczynamy filmem, który przedstawia, czym jest nasza inicjatywa. Moja i Pawła Packa. W dzisiejszych trudnych czasach postanowiliśmy puścić hymn Ukrainy i tak przynajmniej pokazać, że nie jest nam obojętne to, co się dzieje za granicami naszego sąsiada. Mamy dzisiaj fantastyczną szefową MIT Sloan Magazine. Witamy serdecznie. Hello, Abbie. Thank you for being with us. I mamy świetnego prowadzącego tę rozmowę, Pawła Góreckiego z polskiej edycji tego samego pisma. So, it's nothing to say more. I would like to change into English and give floor to Paweł. Thank you for being with us. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for this introduction. Thank you for playing Ukrainian anthem. It was a great idea. So thank you for having us here today. It's great to be here. As you said, I'm Paweł Górecki. I'm responsible for putting together the Polish edition of MIT SMR, which has translated content, obviously, but also our own content. We exist since 2019, and Abbie here is responsible for putting together the American edition, the original one that has been around for over 60 years, a prestigious research-based magazine for business executives. Welcome, Abbie. Good to see you. Great to meet you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So today we are going to talk about how technology influences leadership, which is one of the most important topics for both the Polish MIT SMR and American edition. Let me start with the question related to current events, because it's really difficult not to think about them in these days. With Russia invading Ukraine, businesses in Poland and other countries of the region, and probably even in America, can expect some disruptions, which will bring new challenges for leaders. A pandemic was a drill in crisis management, but what have we learned? What strategies can businesses implement in this new war-related crisis management context, and how can technology help? I mean, many questions. I ask actually many questions, and we decided before that we work on pieces of this question separately. So if we could start maybe with supply chains, cybersecurity, what's most preferable for you?
First, just let me say how concerned we are in the United States for the people of Ukraine and Russia, and for you and your families and businesses in Poland as well. It's really hard for us over here to conceive what people are going through on the ground over there, but we are fully behind you, and I'm so glad that President Biden opened his State of the Union address last night by saying, we stand with the people of Ukraine, and at least on this, our country is pretty united. So I just wanted to put those words there.
Thank you so much.
In terms of the impact on businesses in the region and around the world, you're absolutely right. It has a big, far-reaching impact. And so to take the first one there, you talked about supply chain. During the pandemic, you kind of set that up as it was a drill, and we learned a lot, and that's absolutely true. Most leadership teams experienced what it takes to adapt, either all of their strategies and operating models or parts of them pretty quickly. It happened so fast for everybody. So, for instance, a lot of companies had to broaden their supplier base and tap into new delivery mechanisms and supply routes, and then the same thing is happening now. But even more so, obviously, with disruptions to freight operations in the region and to air travel between Asia and Europe. But it's been amazing to see how quickly companies seem to be responding. So for instance, just in the first days of the conflict, car companies in Europe that depend on parts from China and Eastern Europe had formed task forces to plot out alternative supply routes. And while it may be less efficient and more costly to work with a greater number of geographically diverse suppliers, it definitely helps to mitigate the risk. I think in this case, we're a little bit beyond like preparing for that, and a lot of companies are just having to react.
Yeah, well, no, so what about the other aspects? Yeah, we mentioned before, like cybersecurity, for example.
Yeah, and one of the main things that we learned from the pandemic is that businesses can do a lot more digitally than they'd realized. But at the same time, as we've become more dependent on digital, we've also assumed a lot more cyber risk. So we all know Russia has a strong cyber warfare capability. They launched denial of service and wiper attacks on the Ukraine government and media ahead of the physical invasion. What's interesting is that so far they really haven't targeted critical infrastructure. That it seems that doesn't mean that they won't. And they'll also likely use cyber attacks against any government or company that gets in their way. So the companies that are participating in sanctions, whether that's imposed by their own governments or sort of self-imposed sanctions, those companies are all ripe for becoming targets. And we just have to look back at the 2017 NotPetya cyber attack on Ukraine to see how widespread the impact can really be. In that instance, companies as really diverse as Maersk, the big shipping company, and FedEx, and Merck, the pharmaceutical company, they all had multiple millions of dollars of losses from that. So sort of in terms of thinking about lessons, having a strong cyber defense and response strategy in place will be key for any business. I do think one other thing that's really interesting, though, to the cyber war is that it's not just the cyber units of the states themselves that are getting involved. Wired magazine had an article last week about the variety of non-state actors that are ready and willing to join the attacks on the Russian side, and yes. Ukraine itself has deputized a non-government IT army to help in its defense, both in terms of cybersecurity, but also in terms of communications and social media and just keeping those lines of communication open.
Yeah, but I would add to what she's saying one thing, one aspect. Maybe you agree with me that the agility plays a huge role nowadays. I mean, we still have this huge uncertainty for the businesses, and it's important for companies to be ready for action all the time, because we don't know how the markets will change, how the supply chains will change. Even the cyber attacks could change directions of companies. So agility is key in this very moment.
Absolutely.
Okay, so after this, do you want to add something to this remarks about the current situation, or?
Well, the other major impact on businesses will be the sanctions. Whether or not the sanctions are being imposed by your own government, or whether companies are just sort of taking the initiative themselves to stop doing business with Russia, like BP did, just really quickly, and a lot of other oil companies followed suit. But so the first piece is they have to figure out what they actually need to do to comply with the sanctions, and then what, if anything, they can do to make up for the losses. So yeah, I think there's just so many ways that businesses will be affected by this.
Yes, and there's also this social responsibility aspect of this. I mean, I see it in Poland when companies are really helping and trying to do the best they can to help Ukrainian people, Ukrainian individuals, and Ukrainian companies in providing cars, supplies, everything. So it's amazing, and you can see this social responsibility in action, actually, which is great.
Yeah.
So let us move to our main topic, which is technology and leadership. Your editorial approach suggests that from startups to corporations, every function in today's business landscape is shaped by technology. If you could name 5 biggest trends you're seeing in how technology is changing the way we work, lead in every day, and what would they be? those trends?
Yeah. Well, how much time do you have? That's a lot of. I'll start with the one that I think everybody's wrestling with, and absolutely, technology has an impact on everything organizations do. It's affecting their business models and strategies, how they operate, the workforce and the workplace. But the thing that right now everybody is really wrestling with or experimenting with is this hybrid work models, trying to strike the balance between the kind of flexibility that being virtual enables and that we all experienced during the pandemic, but then also the desire for more in-person collaboration. We have all the tools to do this, but a lot of teams are struggling to make use of those tools effectively. So, for example, just in terms of virtual meetings, some companies are saying, look, even if some people are in the office, if not everybody is in the office, then everybody should do a meeting from little separate rooms. We're all just in Zoom on our separate little laptops. Other companies are saying it's okay for the people who are in the office to be in a conference room together with one camera. And then there's sort of another sort of hybrid model where you can get into the same room, but everybody's still on their laptop. And the idea there is to create a sense of equality, that everybody has the same size square. We're all, and the people who are remote aren't missing out on those side conversations that so often happen when you're sitting around a table together. So that's just one small example of the kinds of things when you talk about leadership and management and the way technology has an impact. What's right for one company, though, when you think about those different models, it might not work for another one. So the way I see companies actually going about this now is the best way is to really start with your corporate culture. If this idea of equality and having everybody be on an equal playing field is really, really important to you, then that's going to dictate one approach. So start with your corporate culture, be really transparent with everybody about what you're trying to accomplish and why. And then also set the expectation that things may change as we learn. We learn what works and what doesn't work. And that approach applies to pretty much everything that we're talking about when we talk about the impact of technology on leadership and culture. So that was one thing. And then just to name a few more things, I think the impact of being able to engage everyone in the organization more directly because of the way we communicate, because of the tools that we have, that can have a huge impact on culture and inclusive leadership. And it can move decision-making closer to the front lines. It's really an enabler of doing business in a very different way. Another one would be how we do learning and development. That's really evolved very, very quickly over the last couple of years. And then, of course, the longer term impact of artificial intelligence on people's jobs and the workflows of the companies. So we could definitely do a whole talk on any one of those things.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll return to some of those topics after in my next questions and your next answers. So when we talk of digital transformation of companies, how important is technological literacy, so to speak, or technological fluency of the top management teams? What capabilities do they have to thrive in digital economy?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's changing very quickly. Just a few years ago, I think CEOs could say, we have a chief digital officer, we have a CIO. I don't need to get so involved in those decisions or thinking about those opportunities, but those days are over. It's really essential for all top managers to have that fluency that you're talking about. And it doesn't mean that they have to be developers or data scientists, but they have to understand what digital options are out there for improving their area of the business. What do they need to know, and how can it help? So for the CEO, it's really about the business model and operations, and they're going to really focus on the impact of technology there. For managers down in the organization, there'll be different concerns, but it definitely affects everybody all through the leadership team.
Okay. And modern businesses seem to move from command and control type of leadership towards more dispersed model in which every member of the workforce is empowered? What role do you think technology plays in that process?
Yeah, and I mean, I touched on that a little bit before, and it's really that this shift is necessary because business is moving so much faster. And you talked about earlier about the need for agility when conditions change, but just the speed is so much faster than it ever was before. And we live in this, omni-channel world. It's not just omni-channel with our customers, but within our organizations too. And the technology makes it possible to, democratize communication and enable companies to move decision-making closer to the customer, the front lines of the business, whether that's somebody working on product development or somebody who's actually engaging one-on-one with customers. So it's that speed, it's that need to get decision-making and action closer to the edge of the business. And of course, a really huge enabler in this is artificial intelligence and automation, which can, they help by creating rules and triggering actions that employees used to have to figure out on their own or get approvals for. And now it's all codified in the actual workflow and the process. So, if you just think about the process of applying for a loan or insurance, that used to take weeks or months, and now it can happen in sometimes hours, but certainly days. And it's just based on the amount of data that companies are able to bring to bear very quickly on any particular application.
Okay. And MIT SMR publishes a lot of topics like leading with impact, measuring culture, and understanding strategy. And regardless of the amount of technology we use, those are still top of mind. Why do you think that's the case?
Leadership, culture, and strategy should be top of mind. And it's in large part because of all the change that the technology is driving. So as the technology creates all these new ways of doing things and changes in the relationships with customers and suppliers, that takes more leadership. That takes a different kind of approach to strategy and culture. So one of our, we do these big idea research projects. One of them last year, it's really interesting, was on the future of leadership. And the research showed that one of the problems over the past, as companies started to digitize, one of the problems was that a lot of emphasis was put on greater efficiency and productivity. And that led to a backlash among employees. This is what this research showed, that employees had a very strong reaction against that. And then along came the pandemic. And that really brought this into stark relief. A lot of people have just been able to reflect on what matters to them in ways they might never have done before. And so flexibility is at the top of the list in terms of, thinking about leadership and culture and how managers and organizational leaders what they have to think about. So flexibility is at the top of the list. And of course, employees always want better pay and better tools, digital tools to support their work. But what came out in this research was that people also want their companies to reflect and respect their personal concerns and values. So this has led a lot of companies to rethink their values. I don't know if it's happening in Poland as much as it's happening here, but there's this whole movement around purpose and vision and mission that a lot of companies are going through this sort of self-reflecting. And so in a lot of cases, it's leading them to go through these efforts to rebuild their culture. And that's a hard thing to do. And to also take a stand on issues that they wouldn't have considered appropriate business issues in the past. And one of the executives that we interviewed for the Future of Leadership report was a former AB InBev CEO, Carlos Brito. And he said, I'll read the quote to you. He said, "I've been CEO for 15 years, and the initial part of my time as CEO was much easier because it was purely about the business. You had to deal with your consumers, with your retailers, but now it's broader. It's about sustainability, it's about race, it's about inequality, it's about politics, it's everything." I love that quote. And honestly, I don't think that there's ever been a more challenging time or potentially a more influential time to be a CEO.
Yeah, this topic of values is also present in Poland, I guess, but we have different issues here. So we're focusing on different issues, but it's certainly present. It's certainly on the rise, and we talk mostly about it now, not actually doing anything, but it will be the case here also, I guess. So you mentioned a couple of times artificial intelligence, and it looks like you're doing a big research project around it. How it impacts business strategy, the future of leadership, and the future of the workforce. Can you tell us about what you're looking at?
Sure. So our big ideas projects are really robust, year-long research, in-depth research projects. We do them typically with a thought leader partner, and we have an academic guest editor who is involved with us. So for the past 5 years, we've been looking at the impact of AI on business strategy, and that includes things like the impact on the workforce and data management and privacy and more. So we want to help managers understand and get value from that combination of human and machine intelligence, while of course avoiding the pitfalls, which there are very many. And those include, financial risk and ethical questions, operational change, and the list goes on and on. Okay. But our most recent research in this series was pretty interesting. It finds that AI can not only improve organizational effectiveness, it can also strengthen teams and culture. I found that to be surprising. Now, this report is based on a global survey of over 2,000 managers and interviews with 18 executives, and it identifies a whole range of AI-related cultural benefits. And those are benefits both for teams and for the organization overall. So for instance, go ahead.
Yeah, that's surprising and amazing.
Yeah, I know. It seemed counterintuitive to me.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
So for instance, as an example, when we looked at the survey respondents who said their AI implementations had improved efficiency and decision making, so those are the sort of hard values, more than 75% of those said they also saw improvements in team morale, collaboration, and collective learning. So I think the takeaway is that AI done right actually improves organizational culture, which something to think about. I think though, it's sort of up to all of us to make sure that happens, and it's not just going to be a consequence of using AI. It's doing AI in a way that really gets at the right things for the business. So another interesting finding was that AI has helped leaders identify new performance drivers that then led them to new assumptions and objectives for their businesses. And then that in turn helped to align behaviors with corporate goals. And I think that's where the culture piece comes out, is, if you're identifying new drivers, new objectives, aligning behavior to corporate goals, I think just the whole organization is going to work more smoothly. And our research director, David Curon, has written an article about this in our spring issue.
Mm-hmm. And what you're saying leads directly to my next question. I was going to ask about, because everybody heard the version of this story that machines are going to take jobs from humans. Some people are frightened, some people are optimistic, and what you're saying is actually suggests there is a reason to be optimistic in that area. Like the artificial intelligence improves the teamwork, and it can be actually beneficial for companies in many aspects. But how do you think we can keep our strong personal culture as humans and machines start to do more work together to make it the most powerful we can do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really great question. And I'll answer it by referring again to some of our published work. So on the positive side, we've got the Big Ideas report that I was just talking about on the cultural benefits of doing AI well. But there's this other piece to it that we have to make sure that we don't surrender our responsibilities to the AI machine. You know, as we learn to trust AI more, so let me just tell you, we published an article called "What Humans Lose When We Let AI Decide," and I think that's a really important thing for all of us to think about as we move more into this AI age. So the article basically makes the case that just because an AI can make certain decisions, and it doesn't mean that we should let it. So the authors argue, and I'm going to quote again here from the article. They said, "We are increasingly, unsuspectingly, yet willingly abdicating our power to make decisions based on our own judgment, including our moral convictions. What we believe is right risks becoming no longer a question of ethics, but simply what the correct result of a mathematical equation is." And I think, you know, that risk to me feels it feels true to me, because when you think about all the responsibilities that, you know, we average humans have in our daily lives, it's very easy to see how tempting it will be once we've gotten to that level of trust with AI to just, you know, gladly give over decisions that might be complicated or nuanced or painful to make. We'll let the machine decide and move on with our day. And this is a risk that we all have to guard against, both as individuals and as leaders in companies.
Okay. And remote work and hybrid work in times of global pandemic and after it ends is and will be a great challenge for leaders as well. Many of them struggle to measure workforce's effectiveness, engagement, and to manage lack of motivation. What other problems do you see in that area, and what would be a suggestion to solve them?
Managers, and I'm talking not necessarily about the sort of executive level or the top level of the organization, but the managers who manage the people and are responsible for getting the work done, really need a lot of support to be able to build and lead effective teams in the hybrid or virtual world. It's a whole new way of operating. And, you know, it's kind of a cliche, but to say, in the past, if a manager could just say, okay, somebody's sitting at their desk and they're typing, so they're doing their job. You know, it was kind of easy to see if somebody was, but we need all new metrics. We need all new, we need to redefine what it means to do effective work. And so a lot of companies are starting to abandon just sort of the simple productivity metric as being the most relevant, and really trying to get at what does it mean to do effective work. The other part of that is engaging and motivating teams when you're not physically together. It's definitely more challenging. You know, if you're not, you don't have the body language, you don't have the just running into people in the hallway part of it. It can be done, but it is more challenging. And so companies have to provide their managers with the training and structure and the tools to get the work done to the right quality standards, but also while tending to the well-being of their employees. You know, especially right now with the war following on the pandemic and all the other huge concerns that we humans are facing right now.
So do you in your office work in the hybrid mode or remotely mostly? How it works?
Yeah, so we've gone back and forth a little bit. Right now, we're in pure hybrid mode. People who want to come into the office are welcome to come into the office. Those of us who are coming in are typically coming in just a couple of days a week right now. But we've also told people that if you're not comfortable yet coming back in, that's okay. We do try to get everybody in once a month for a team meeting so that we can all just have that connection point. But it's pretty virtual right now. How about
So
you?
does it almost the same? Almost the same. Does it feel okay for you as a leader to work in that mode, or you prefer to be in the office?
So I've been working, prior to having this job, I was working for myself, and I was running my own company. So all my clients were remote. I was pretty used to working in that kind of an environment, but it is definitely, it takes a lot more sort of intentional outreach to do the kinds of things that you used to just do by being around each other.
Okay. And what technological aspects of our job, being journalists, do you see on the horizon as potential threats or enablers or facilitators?
The thing that we're focusing a lot on right now, one of the things that we're focusing a lot on right now is really making much more of an effort to bring our content to our audience in whatever way they want to consume it. So some people like to listen to podcasts, some people like to watch videos, some people like to read transcripts or full articles. And so what we're planning for is a world in which, our audience can get our content and our insights and our authors, great ideas in whatever way works best for them.
Yeah, I have to agree. Yeah, it's a way of providing the content to the readers, to the viewers. It's the biggest challenge. So I have one last question before we move to the question from our audience. Success today doesn't just mean that you innovate, you hire good people, treat them well, and stay at the top of your industry. It also means that you are a good corporate citizen. Mm-hmm. And play fair while interacting with the rest of the world. I saw that recently MIT SMR focuses on businesses' social responsibility. Do you see any trends here? What they look like?
Yeah, we've actually had a number of pieces around this topic recently, and the authors of one of our recent articles, they analyzed over 200 surveys conducted by a variety of organizations. So these were research organizations, consulting companies, think tanks, government entities, all of them around this question about what is motivating organizations to be more socially responsible. And they found that the common driver to investing in corporate social responsibility, it wasn't altruism as much as we'd like to think that. It wasn't a deep-seated moral conviction, but rather the companies believe that by redefining their values, that redefining their values could improve their corporate image, which would then bring more benefits from various stakeholders. So not that it's a cynical motivation. I think there's also genuine motivation in there to do the right thing, but they're seeing that there's a business benefit as well. And so the authors describe this as the halo effect. And I think what will be interesting to see, though, even though this was sort of the motivation to get in there, I will be very interested to see if this redefining of values actually sticks and really does start to change the world.
Okay.
So I wanted to, I think I can sort of tie together some of the themes that we've been talking about. Yeah. We just published a piece by Megan Rates based on her research and other studies about the fact that we're really entering an age of employee activism. And I don't know if you're familiar with Brené Brown. She's a well-known figure here. She does a lot of things around well-being and effectiveness and personal effectiveness. But she just had Professor Rates on her podcast this week to talk about this. And anyway, Professor Rates believes that employee activism could change the power dynamics within organizations, and that leaders will have to respond to and even take a stand on issues that they really didn't have to think about before. That's a sort of that what Carlos Brito was talking about as a CEO. So Rates argues that while corporations don't have to stand for everything, they do have to stand for something, and they'd better figure out what those things are and how they're going to lead that. So, so they need to think through what that impact of the impact of taking a stand. What will that be on their employees, on their customers too? You know, it's not a simple equation, but not taking a stand sends its own message. So sitting on the sidelines just isn't a viable option anymore. And you know, as you mentioned, that's not just in the United States. That's something that's conversations that are happening around the world.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Abbie. So let's move to the questions from our audience. I think I see them on our chat. Can you see them as well?
I can, yep.
So let me read the first one for our viewers. What do you think? On the one hand, innovators in Israel or the States, for example, showed that the military can make a real difference in innovation. Military people can be great managers. And how about the other way around?
Okay, so the other way around being, can managers make good military people? Is that...
Difficult to say.
Yeah. That's a tough question. There certainly is a strong link between innovation and the military in lots of different ways, not just in the technology and strategy, but also in a lot of the human resources pieces of it. We just ran I don't know if it's run yet or not. I think it has. We ran a piece about that did a large scale study. I think it was over 1 million US soldiers participated in the study that showed that people who are happy perform better, and they measured that by how many awards they were given, how many promotions they got, and so I think there's a cause and effect here. The people who came into the Army already being happy were performing better, but the message for organizations is then investing in helping people be happy at work is worth the investment.
And what about this innovation aspect of military? Do you think that's a real impact? I mean, the internet was actually conceived in the army, like the first version. So there certainly is a link. But in current world, can you see how this may play?
I mean, the internet, the communications, the logistics, strategy, all of those, in a lot of innovations in a lot of different areas have come out of the military.
Yeah. Next question. One more question about the war. I thought today that the difference between the conduct of this war between Russia and Ukraine is that Russia is fighting the old style, like companies in the 200th century. Ukraine, on the other hand, is pure agile, lots of iterations. What can be done to make this agile win?
I should tap my military strategist friends for these answers. I mean, it's remarkable what Ukraine has done. It's just completely remarkable in so many ways, in terms of the agility, in terms of the rallying of people, ordinary people, to get engaged and do whatever they can. It's such just looking at the two sides, it's such a stark difference between the approach that Russia is taking, where the soldiers didn't even know why they were going in. They were told they were going in for a different reason, and then when they found out that that's not what they were going in for, their motivation was just shot to heck. And on the flip side, the motivation of the Ukrainian people to say, hey, this is our homeland and we're going to defend it is incredible. So whether or not that has to do with, an old style, top down, autocratic model, and then the sort of bottom up engaged model of sort of modern management, I don't think we can make a call at this point, like what's the outcome of that going to be, but certainly it certainly helped Ukraine to, in a very surprising way, fend off a huge aggressor.
Yeah. Next question. Do you think we need to be afraid of artificial intelligence?
I think a little fear is not a bad thing. Not in terms of just being ignorantly fearful, but being cautious and being, wanting to know more about really how does this work and what can this do for us and what are the risks. I think it's good to go into anything that's new and unknown with a lot of open-mindedness and questions. What do you think? What do you think, Paweł?
I think, yes, I think we have to be cautious, and we have to be cautious also about the algorithms which are based on artificial intelligence and which power current social media. And this is a potential threat I can see, because they stimulate extreme reactions in users of social media, which turns into polarization and extreme conflict, political on the political level, and many others. So this may be really dangerous, and it is really dangerous. And many people pointed out that this is really difficult to deal with now. So I hope it will be more civilized in the future, and we could manage this problem. And this aspect of artificial intelligence and algorithms is frightening to me.
Well, and I think what's underneath that is AI is still built by humans, and some humans have great intentions, and some humans have terrible intentions, and that's what we have to really watch out for. And how do we put in place the mechanisms to oversee that?
Yeah. Next question. COVID changed the world. Now is being changed by war. Like, if you were a psychic or an analyst, what's next?
That's a really big question.
Are you a psychic?
I have no idea what's next. I think that, to your point, Paweł, agility is the key. Like, we know something will be next, whether it's, radical climate change that causes a lot of disruption or something else. We have to be anticipating and doing what we can to mitigate those threats and be able to react quickly.
Okay. I see we have more questions, so let me read the next one. If you look at Poland from bird's eye view, from a distant country, what do you think are the innovative strengths of our scientists and our business? What would you advise us?
I have to say I'm not as closely familiar with the scientific work being done in Poland specifically. So it's a little hard for me to answer that question. My observations have been that there is a lot of innovative spirit, and it seems to me, again, as an outsider, that that was the way the question was phrased, from bird's eye view from a distant country. So that's where I'm coming from. It does seem that there's a pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? An attitude of being able to do things, of getting things accomplished. That's really helpful when it comes to innovation. That it's yes, there are constraints, but that there's a belief that we can get things done. And I'm just making things up here. So Paweł, so what do you think?
So I think our strengths are many. I mean, we knew a couple years ago we were in communism. I mean, it was not so long ago. So we knew how bad it can be. And now we've seen all the change that happened in our country. So we have this spirit of going forward. And we have many talented young people in the fields of like coding or new technologies, inventing things. They may not be as well funded as they would like to be. So, but this may change in the future because we're still we're still developing. So I'm really hopeful about this. I have a son who is going to become a coder, and he's very, very skillful. So I'm hopeful that he and his peers will change the future in this respect. And next question. How do you look at changes in the governance of the states and the business placed there? We used to have a laissez-faire outlook that has been changing for the last several years. States are becoming active players in disruptive innovation. The best example of this was warp speed operation. Do you think it will continue in this direction?
I'm not sure if that's a question for me or for you, Paweł.
I don't know the answer to this question. Also, it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, is the question about states being governments becoming active players in disruptive innovation, and is that something that is happening in Poland more so than in the United States?
I mean, the innovation is notoriously not very well funded here. So I'm not sure if this is the case, but some initiatives are obviously happening. But I think there could be much more. Yeah. Let's move to the next question. How about we look at it all differently? Surely innovation is important. Maybe just having a good business model is enough, and that's it. Sell meat or make bread, and don't worry about everything new. People have to eat.
I don't think you can avoid innovating today and stay viable unless even a very small local business. Just as an example, we have a cupcake company in my town, and they make cakes, they make cupcakes, but they also have a website, and they use, the different payment methods and different ways of ordering. And I think it's hard to avoid being able to stay in business if you're not innovating around some of the things that you're doing, and in particular around engaging with your customers.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, innovation is everywhere, even in baking. Yeah. So next question. We know that the clash between social media and traditional media has been a difficult thing. How did you deal with it at MIT SMR, I guess? How do you handle influencers with no experience?
We don't see it as a clash at all. We see it as a great advantage to be able to engage with our audience in different ways on different platforms. Our audience in terms of social platforms, probably LinkedIn is the biggest one for us, that because that's where a lot of business people gather. Twitter to a lesser extent, Facebook less so, but it's a way to engage with our existing audience, but also to connect with people who may not be familiar with us. If we put out something that's provocative or interesting, intriguing, it's a really good way to reach out and get engaged with people. And then as far as, I'm not sure what the part with influencers with no experience, I'm not sure what that's referring to.
I think it refers to our competition, like influencers on the internet who have no experience but have great audiences and great power because of this. And they are our competition. Yeah. Yeah.
So then what we try to do is we try to get them to talk about us. So.
Exactly. Next question. Why is innovation so important and so difficult?
I think we just touched on that it's you can't not innovate today and stay relevant. You just can't.
So let's specify. Let's be more specific and read the next question. And what do you think about open innovation Is this a good way to develop innovation? Who should benefit from them?
I mean, lots of organizations are benefiting from it, including the military, including different parts of, in the United States, different scientific government agencies have really embraced that, and a lot of commercial companies, again, scientific based or technology based. There's whole communities of people out there who are really smart and who just love to conceive of new ideas and are happy to engage with people who will help fund them in that, and that they get to work with other really smart people.
Okay. Thank you, Abbie. I think we have no more questions. It was great talking to you, and I hope our viewers will also find it interesting. So let's give let's a voice to our hosts for a short wrap up.
Great, and thank you so much for having me. It was really great to be here.
Thank you so much.
Abbie and Paweł, I would like to thank you to all. Thank you, Paweł, for great moderating this our meeting, and
my pleasure.
Thank you, Abbie, for being for us and give us for a lot of I would say impressive questions,
answers.
Yeah, it's hard to answer for all of them, but you can see that our attendees are people who are thinking in different on different areas. So thank you very much. I hope the war will be end. Sorry for this talk about during innovation meeting, but I think all believe that our world will be go in a good condition next year. Thank you very much, and let give Ukraine the power to win the war. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good night. Bye.
You too.
You too.